Hello and welcome back to Naturo Academy. Today we're going to be talking about sleep and in particular how to optimize your sleep. So we're going to keep it very practical. I'm not going to bore you with all the statistics about how everyone can't sleep and how important it is for your health. I think we all know that stuff. So let's just get into the nitty-gritty of what you need to do to improve your sleep. And honestly, it's not rocket science. It's not complicated. It really just comes down to being disciplined and making this part of your daily routine. And if you're still struggling with sleep, there's obviously other factors that could be contributing. So it's always good to see a holistic health provider who can help you get to the root cause of what your issue is. But 90% of the time, all it's going to take is a very simple steps. It just takes some commitment to implementing these things into your daily life. So let's start with watching the sunrise. So this is one of the most powerful things you can do for your health overall, and in particular because it helps to regulate your circadian rhythm. I've done videos on this on the past, but basically that's your 24-hour sleep-wake cycle, which controls, it sounds kind of simple, just your sleep-wake cycle, but that controls all of your sleep functions and all of your awake functions, which is basically everything. So it's extremely important to have this intact and following the cycles of nature. So what happens in the morning, if you're getting adequate light exposure, in particular natural blue light, which is good for you, okay? Blue light, not all blue light is bad. Natural blue light is good for you because it helps to stimulate your cortisol production in the morning, and that gives you that morning energy, okay? The thing is, when it's isolated blue light, it's gonna cause issues because it's not balanced by the other spectrum. It's kind of like isolating sugar from fruit, which no longer is a whole food, and it's no longer a balanced product for the body. So same thing with isolated blue light from screens. Bad news, natural blue light from the sun. Good news is to regulate your circadian rhythm. So basically what happens, cortisol will increase throughout the day, especially if you get morning sunlight. You're going to get a nice peak in cortisol early on, and that's going to slowly decrease throughout the day. When that goes down, your melatonin is going to increase at night, and that's what helps you get a restful, deep sleep and support the sleep portion of your sleep-wake cycle, okay? Another thing that actually happens, so melatonin gets produced in the morning as long as you're exposed to UVA light. So that doesn't happen right at the sunrise, but it is early in the morning. And then it gets released later at night when your body is exposed to darkness, which we'll get into later. But basically, the important part is that when you're watching the sunrise in the morning, you're going to get a boost in cortisol, which is good for the circadian rhythm. And then your melatonin is also going to get produced at that time to be released later. In order for this to happen, you have to get direct sunlight on your eyes and your skin. Okay, so your eyes are the most important because that's where you have photoreceptors that communicate with different parts of your brain that regulate this circadian rhythm. So that's where the master regulator, I like to think of it as the conductor of the symphony, which is your organs, your cells, the rest of your body. That's where the conductor is housed. So you need to get that light signal right in the eyes. Your skin also has photoreceptors. So ideally you're not wearing sunglasses, even regular prescription glasses, and not wearing a ton of clothes if possible. And it honestly doesn't take much. Some of the research shows as little as 5 minutes is all you need to regulate that circadian rhythm. I would suggest more. We're designed to live outside 24/7, which we've kind of forgotten. So staying outside as long as you can in the morning, go for a nice walk, chill in your backyard, doesn't really matter. Obviously, getting direct sunlight is ideal, but it's not always sunny. Sometimes you just don't have access to it, especially if you're living in a city when there's lots of buildings and stuff. So do your best to get direct exposure. But even if you can't, just the fact that it's light out that you can see means there's a ton of light there, and that's more than enough to regulate that circadian rhythm. So even on a cloudy, gloomy day, you're still going to get plenty of benefits. So first thing in the morning, go outside, get some natural sun exposure. Okay, next up. So stopping caffeine by noon. For some people, it should probably be earlier. Well, honestly, for some people, you probably just shouldn't have caffeine, especially if you're the kind of person who has a cup of coffee and you feel super stimulated, jittery, anxious. Doesn't mean you have to give it up forever, but probably it's not doing your body any service at this time. So caffeine is a stimulant, okay? At the end of the day, stimulants do increase your stress hormones. So you don't want to overdo it, and you don't want to be doing this late at night, because once you're doing it later on in the day, it's going to mess up that circadian rhythm. So coffee, it depends on your genetics. Everyone has a different propensity to metabolizing caffeine, but just on average, it has about a 5-hour half-life. So that means after 5 hours, half of that caffeine is still in your body. So after 10 hours, you're still going to have 25% of that caffeine in your blood. So say you even have your last cup of coffee at noon, by 10 p.m., you're still going to have 25%, a quarter of that caffeine is still in your blood when you're trying to go to bed, right? So, and think about if you have something at dinner. Sometimes people have an espresso or whatever, as a dessert after dinner. So that totally destroys your circadian rhythm. So make sure you're having caffeine as early on as possible in the day and try to limit it as much as you can. I know it's a nice thing to have, and there's nothing wrong with having a cup or two in the morning, but keep it to that time, okay? Don't do it later on in the day. Nicotine will also have a similar effect, and of course, other stimulants. Don't do a line of cocaine before you go to bed. It's not going to be helpful, and that goes for any stimulants in general. Okay, exercise. So this is an important Zeitgeber, which is a time giver. So these are the different stimuli that are going to regulate our circadian rhythm. So we talked about, caffeine is definitely one, but light is the most important one. And then there's going to be food intake and exercise. Those are going to be three of the main ones. So exercise is very important early on in the day, and even in the afternoon as well, but you want to be avoiding it late at night. So you've probably had that experience of playing a sport really late at night or going to the gym super late and then trying to sleep right after. It's totally throwing off that circadian rhythm. So you want to make sure you're exercising early on in the day, which helps support a healthy circadian rhythm, avoiding it later on. Okay, food intake. So eating is a very energy intensive process. Okay, it requires a lot of energy to digest food, and you don't want to be doing that late at night because you need that energy to be performing all the functions of sleep. So all the reparative, rejuvenating effects of sleep, they require a lot of energy. But if all that energy is going towards digesting a massive meal you just ate, you're not going to be recovering properly. Okay, and eating as well just sends a signal to your body that it must still be daytime. Okay, so that's more of a daytime activity. If you think about it from an ancestral perspective, you'd be hunting and gathering during the day, eating when the sun is up, but after the sun goes down, you're basically just chilling around the fire, right? You're not going to be eating much, and that's going to shift your circadian rhythm later if you are eating. So I would say stop eating at least 3 hours before bed. The longer, the better. And just as a general time, people like, hard specific. So 7 p.m., if you don't eat after 7 p.m., you're probably in good shape. But there's going to be some seasonal variation. So I always look at the light and dark cycle. So in the summer, it's going to be, you have a longer photo period in most places. I'm in the Northern Hemisphere in Canada, so we have, decently long days in the summer, and it's okay to stretch out that eating window a little bit more, eat foods a little bit later. But in the winter, it gets dark very early, sometimes like 4 or 5 p.m. So I do my best not to eat after it's dark because that's going to be disrupting that circadian rhythm. Also, avoiding liquids at night. If you're prone to peeing at night, that's also going to be helpful. It doesn't really have as big of an impact on circadian rhythm, but food, definitely, you want to be having that as early as possible. Okay, next up here is avoiding artificial light at night after the sun sets. So that's what ALAN stands for. So this is basically the opposite of what I talked about in the morning. So you want to get that natural sun exposure in the morning, but on the other side of the day, you want to be avoiding light as much as you can. So again, back to an ancestral perspective, there's no such thing as artificial light. Once the sun goes down, all you have is fire, and that signal of darkness is actually very important for a number of things, but primarily to release your melatonin, which is going to give you all the restorative effects of sleep. So in today's world, we just flip on the lights if it gets dark, or put on TV and scroll on Instagram, whatever. But all that light sends a signal to our body that it still must be daytime. In particular, those screens and LEDs emit a lot of blue light. And remember from the very first slide, when you're exposed to blue light, that's going to increase your cortisol. So we're doing the exact opposite of what you want to do if you're exposed to light at night. So some of the strategies. Blue blocking glasses are great because it doesn't require a massive change in your lifestyle. All you got to do is throw them on. So these are Naturoblocks nighttime blue blockers, which block 100% of the blue spectrum, and as well they block some green. So it's important that you're blocking both of those, because anywhere in the 400 to 550 nanometer range, which is blue and some green, when you're exposed to that light at night, it's going to suppress your melatonin. So you got to block all of that. So you can go to naturalblocks.com to grab a pair of those, or you can change your environment, which honestly I would recommend. That's always my first choice, is to change your environment. But in the modern world, it's very difficult to make some of these changes. So blue blockers are an easy workaround. But if you don't want to do that, candles are excellent. So we're designed to be exposed to fire after the sun sets. And the nice thing about fire is it doesn't contain any blue light. So it's basically red and infrared. It has that, that calming feel. You can just sense it, right? When you're in a room with candles, you start to, you chill, you calm down. And that's what we're designed over, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to be exposed to. Red LEDs are another good option. So candles aren't always, convenient. So red LED bulbs are good. Pink Himalayan salt lamps are pretty good, especially the ones that are dimmable. So it's not just the spectrum of light, but it's also the intensity. So anything that's dimmer is going to have less of an impact on your circadian rhythm, but you also want the spectrum to be more in the red, orange range. So do your best, but it's one of the easiest things to do is to buy a salt lamp or just get, a single red LED bulb and just use that at night. Do something relaxing under that light. Okay, and so it's important, similar to the morning sun exposure, eyes are the most important because that's where you have your primary photoreceptors, but also your skin. So, I'm not too strict about covering my skin at night, but make sure you're taking care of the eyes. So wearing blue blocking glasses or just not having super bright lights on at night. And for your screens, I'd suggest not being on screens at all a couple hours before bed, but if you must be, you can download screen softwares for your computers and your phones. Iris is great software. That's the one that I personally use. It's like $15 for lifetime use, something like that. Or f.lux is a free version. Just make sure that screen is basically as red or orange as possible at night, and that's going to cut out majority of the blue light and decrease the melatonin suppression. Okay, relaxing, very important. Big problem in today's society because we're so go and we're very stressed out collectively in Western society at least. So the problem with this is that is going to increase your cortisol when you're stressed out, and that's the opposite of what we want at night. We want to be decreasing our cortisol so that our melatonin can increase. Okay, so I was watching Stranger Things last night with my blue blockers, of course, but it was a pretty intense episode, a lot of scary stuff, and my heart rate was going, and when I tried to go to bed right after, I had a difficult time because my cortisol was raised from watching a scary show, which is not a good thing to do at night, but so basically you want to be avoiding anything that's going to increase your cortisol, which could be watching scary things, but also anything that's going to be stimulating in general. So we already talked about the stimulants with caffeine, any other stimulants, no bueno. And screens also act as a stimulant. So blue light, in a sense, is also a stimulant. So, that's another reason to avoid that. But basically doing anything to decrease your cortisol and help relax you. So meditating is awesome. Stretching at night is a very good activity to do. Reading. So reading under a dim lamp is excellent. Basically everyone who has sleep issues tells me that, well, when I read, I can fall asleep. So that's a good option. Going for a walk, anything to chill. Okay. So just think about consciously lowering your cortisol. There's also some supplements and different herbal teas and stuff that will help support that. Okay, you want to be asleep by 10 p.m. Again, there's going to be some seasonal variation, but generally your deep sleep cycles start around 10 p.m. and they go until 2 a.m. So you do have deep sleep and REM sleep cycles throughout the whole night, but that first portion, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., more of your sleep cycles are going to be in the deep sleep phase. And then from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., as a percentage, more of your sleep cycles are going to be spent in REM. Okay, so majority of deep sleep early on in the night, and that is your physical repair. Okay, so your body doing more physical repair. REM sleep, people still don't know fully what it is. It's kind of an odd phenomenon, but that's when you're dreaming, and that is more of a psychological repair, we believe. So making sure you're asleep by 10. A lot of people go to bed closer to midnight or 1 a.m. too, and they're missing out on a lot of that deep sleep. Okay, so even if you're still getting 8 hours going to bed from like midnight until 8 a.m., that's not equivalent to having a sleep cycle from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., even though they're both 8 hours, okay? Hopefully that makes sense, but it's not just the absolute amount of time you're sleeping, it's also when you're sleeping, because that's more in line with your circadian rhythm. And when in doubt, just go by the light and dark cycles of where you live. Okay, so your bed is for sleep only. You want to create an association that tells your brain basically the bed is for sleeping. This is a place where I rest and rejuvenate. So you don't want to be doing other activities in the bed. You don't want to be working in the bed on your phone, on your computer, that sort of stuff. So just have your room where you sleep in your bed. A lot of people say the bed is for sleep and sex only, and that's how you should keep it. But sleep and sex are two very different things. You don't want to be associating your sleep with sex either. Not saying you can't have sex there, but you want to associate your bed with sleep. And if you're doing other things in there all the time, then it's going to be creating a negative association, not necessarily a negative association, but not an association with sleep. So if you're having sleep issues, reserve your bed for sleep only. And if you're awake for a long time in bed, so say you wake up in the middle of the night and you're just tossing and turning for hours, again, you're creating a negative association that your bed is not somewhere where you sleep, it's where you toss and turn. So 30 minutes is kind of subjective, but if you are awake for a good chunk of time, in the middle of the night, just get up, do something else, okay? Don't turn on all the lights, but go do some reading under a dim lamp or some stretching or meditating, whatever it is, and then come back to the sleep or the bedroom to sleep when you're ready to do so. So you develop that positive association. All right, eliminating non-native EMFs. So I don't have enough time to go into all the science of those, but basically these are electromagnetic fields that are produced from man-made technology, and they cause a whole bunch of issues, but for a lot of people, it interferes with their sleep quality. So you can't avoid these during the day because we're bombarded by them, and now with these 5G satellites and all this infrastructure, it's only going to get worse. So can't totally avoid it, but you can do things to reduce your exposure. And one of the things you can do is try to create a sleep sanctuary where you're not exposed to a lot of these at night. So at least your body gets proper recovery and rest, and it's able to be more resilient during the day. So the primary source for most people is going to be smart devices. And basically any Wi-Fi. So you don't want to have any phones in the bedroom. If you do, it needs to be on airplane mode. Okay, no other smart devices. There's, so many different smart devices. I would argue that they're actually dumb devices because they are harming your health. But turning off your Wi-Fi at night is another good thing to do. So you can just have this on an automatic timer. So you plug your Wi-Fi router into this automatic timer that's going to turn off from, say, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or whatever you set it as. So that way you don't even have to worry about it. If you're very sensitive, you can also turn off the electrical breaker to the room that you're sleeping in. So it's not just the wireless technologies that emit EMFs. It's also like outlets, for example. So you wouldn't want to have your head sleeping directly beside an outlet because you're going to be exposed to dirty electricity. So that's where it would be helpful to either move your bed or just turn off the breaker at night. But most importantly, that's a little bit more like advanced, but I would say most importantly, you just don't want to be having like your phone under your pillow, for example. Okay, darkness. So as I mentioned, darkness is going to be very important for melatonin release. So in the bedroom, you don't want to have all these flashing lights. Like I find hotels are terrible for this. There's always these, little things going on. So you don't want to have any of that. Unplug your electronics or just don't have them in the bedroom in general. Use blackout curtains. Eye masks are also good, but lots of options just to create a dark environment. The next thing is a cool environment. So naturally, if you think about it, if you're sleeping outside, and you probably know this from camping, it gets pretty cool at night. And that drop in temperature creates, there's physically a drop in core body temperature. And that is going to help promote deep and restful sleep. So some of the research shows that somewhere between 15.5 and 20 degrees Celsius is optimal. I know it's a pretty big range, but people have different, everyone's just different in terms of what makes them comfortable. So just keep things on the cooler end, and you might have to experiment a bit. And something that really helps is either taking a hot bath, hot shower, or sauna before bed, as long as it's not it's more so for the sauna. You wouldn't want to really overdo it with the sauna. But the other things, it's kind of counterintuitive. You'd think that would warm your body, but actually what it's doing is it's warming the surface, the periphery of your body. So it increases blood flow to the outside of your body. And then once your body sweats or just having all that blood flow on the external, it's going to dissipate heat, bringing heat away from the core to the periphery and then dissipating it outwards. So you're actually cooling your core body temperature when you're exposed to these sources of heat. Okay. So, and you've probably noticed after you take a hot shower or hot bath, you do feel sleepy. There's also calming effects to those themselves, but these are good strategies to help support cooling your core body temperature. All right, so that's it. I hope you found something informative in this presentation. And like I said, a lot of this stuff you probably already know, or you could have figured out on your own because it's not rocket science. It is very easy stuff. It just takes some discipline to get into a routine of doing these things. And that's another big part is the consistency. Okay, so you don't want to be partying every weekend and totally throwing this out the door and then trying to get back on track during the weekdays. Obviously, there's going to be times when you can't be perfect, but try to be as consistent as possible. And if you're still having trouble, you can reach out below and book a free discovery call with myself or another practitioner at our clinic, and we can help you out with that. And I would suggest you look into getting blue blocking glasses. So as I said, we have the nighttime blue blockers, which are excellent for supporting healthy melatonin release and sleep quality. And we also have daytime glasses if you're on screens constantly, which can be very helpful for some of those, the negative effects of screen fatigue. And you can use the exclusive code NATUROFAM for 10% off. Thanks for watching and have a great day.